All right, so let's talk about the people behind the scenes, the ones who make the decisions that affect us all.
The puppet masters.
Uh-huh. Yeah, kind of. But today we're diving deep into the career of Simon Case,
The former UK cabinet secretary.
the one and only. Recently resigned. You can think of the role like the CEO of the whole UK civil service.
A pretty powerful position.
Hugely. And he was right there in the middle of things during some, well, let's call them interesting times in British politics.
Brexit, Partygate, the whole shebang.
Exactly. So we're on a mission today. Grifter or gifted? Did Case navigate the choppy waters of government skillfully, or was he more interested in, well, playing the game and climbing that ladder?
It's fascinating, isn't it? How someone can be so powerful, shaping policies, advising leaders, but most people wouldn't even recognize his name.
Totally. And his career path? Kind of wild. I mean, this guy held a ton of different positions. We're talking Olympics planning, Brexit negotiations, even advising royalty.
All before he turned 42, if I'm remembering correctly.
Right? It's crazy. Joined the civil service in 2006, quickly moved up through the ranks, even did a stint at the royal household.
And then, bam, youngest cabinet secretary in, forever. 2020, I think it was.
It's almost like he was being groomed for the top job, right?
Should be. But that's what makes this deep dive so intriguing. The sources we've got, they paint a very mixed picture of the guy.
It's like a split personality almost. Some people praise his efficiency, call him a great fixer, someone who gets things done.
A real problem solver.
The-
But then others,
Go on.
they're not so impressed. They say he lacked transparency, that he basically just went along with whatever the prime ministers wanted.
Even if it was, shall we say, ethically questionable.
Right. So was he a strategic genius or more concerned with protecting himself?
Maybe both. It's tricky. For example, take Jacob Rees-Mogg.
The former business secretary.
Yeah, big fan of Case, loved his efficiency, praised him for helping the government deliver on its promises.
She sounds like a glowing endorsement.
On the surface, sure. But then you hear from, say, this former senior civil servant we talked to.
Oh, yeah. What did they say?
They were worried that Case wasn't strong enough, that he didn't push back against the prime ministers he worked for.
Interesting. Like he was more worried about keeping everyone happy than about doing what he thought was right.
Maybe. This civil servant even said they saw too many examples of things happening that shouldn't have happened.
Cryptic.
Right. Did Case prioritize smooth operations over potential ethical problems? And this tension really comes to a head when you think about Partygate.
Oh, Partygate. That was a whole mess.
For those who need a reminder, it was that string of gatherings at 10 Downing Street, during lockdown, breaking their own COVID rules.
And Case was right in the thick of it.
Yep. Even had to recuse himself from the investigation, which, talk about awkward.
So was he just caught up in a bad culture at Downing Street, or did he actually contribute to the rule break?
Yeah, where does personal responsibility start and end, especially for someone in that position? So how did he address all this?
Well, when he spoke to the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee, he called the conduct described in the Partygate report horrifying.
Strong words.
Definitely. He acknowledged that those in charge were responsible for the culture that allowed those gatherings to happen. But he didn't really go into detail about his own actions. Instead, he emphasized that some of the people involved in Partygate had worked tirelessly during the pandemic.
So was he genuinely remorseful? Or was that just a way to deflect blame? Hard to say.
Very tricky. It's like he was trying to balance acknowledging the seriousness of the situation, but also maybe shifting the narrative a bit, highlighting the good work that had been done. What do you think, listener?
Yeah, what do you think? Was it genuine remorse or damage control?
Yeah. And then there's the internal market bill. This one really brings that grifter or gifted question to the forefront.
This bill was seen by a lot of people as a straight-up breach of international law. Yeah, it caused a lot of controversy. And here's where things get really interesting. Government lawyers actually told Case that this bill would break the UK's treaty obligations.
But he still recommended that the government go ahead with it.
He did.
Wow. What was his reasoning there?
Well, according to a message sent to government legal officials, he basically concluded that working on the bill was okay under the Civil Service Code. They're obligated to comply with the law and uphold the administration of justice, even if it means potentially breaking international agreements.
So he's saying domestic law trumps international agreements. That's a bit bold.
It is.
Yeah.
It definitely raised some eyebrows. The message went on to say, staff might wish to note that the cabinet secretary has determined that notwithstanding the breach of international law, ministers and civil servants are operating in accordance with their obligations under the ministerial code and civil service code.
So he's acknowledging the breach, but saying their internal rules make it okay. It's like a loophole, isn't it?
Right. Like, yeah, we broke the rules, but our rules say we're allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
Did he truly believe that? Or was it just a way to please the government?
Hard to know what was going on in his head.
It really is. And then to add another layer to all this, there's his farewell speech. He gave this lecture at King's College London called Portraits of a Profession, the Civil Service of Today.
Portraits of a profession, huh? Sounds self-congratulatory now.
Well, he highlighted 8 civil servants who he felt embodied the best of the service. So, was it a genuine celebration or a carefully crafted PR campaign? Let's take a look.
Sounds good. Let's dive into these portraits.
Okay, so the first one is about Beck. She started as an apprentice, working in the staff nursery at the Defense Science and Technology Laboratory.
DSTL.
Yep. And eventually she became a full-fledged apprentice. Now she's working towards a degree.
A classic story of working your way up.
Exactly. Case said he was immensely proud of the apprenticeship program,
Yeah.
emphasizing their focus on things like science, technology, all those future skills.
So Beck's success story is a testament to the opportunities within the civil service.
That's how he framed it. But then you've got Ruby.
What did Ruby do?
She's a Home Office civil servant who worked on the Rwanda scheme.
The one that sends asylum seekers to Rwanda?
The very one. Highly controversial, lots of criticism, even within the civil service itself.
Yeah, that one sparked quite a debate.
Definitely. So how did Case address that?
Well, he acknowledged the discomfort Ruby and her colleagues faced, called them lightning rods for controversy.
Wow, really putting it out there.
He did. But then he praised her for recognizing the right of ministers to explore innovative and deeply controversial solutions.
Basically, he commended her for setting aside her own views and implementing the policy no matter how much backlash there was.
He was really emphasizing impartiality.
Yeah, putting personal beliefs aside to carry out the government's agenda, even if it's unpopular. So, listener, where do you draw the line? Duty versus personal conscience, especially when dealing with policies you might find morally wrong.
A tough question for sure.
Okay, moving on to portrait number 3. This one's about Clarice. She won the Prime Minister's Award for Exceptional Public Service in 2022, worked with the Ukraine Task Force, making sure humanitarian aid got to those in need.
Crucial work, especially with everything going on over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Case highlighted her dedication, saying she wasn't motivated by glory, but by service.
Sounds like a real hero.
He really painted her as such. Again, emphasizing that commitment to the mission. It's like he's trying to counter the Partygate image, right? Showcasing the good work that civil servants do.
It's a good PR move, that's for sure.
So listener, what do you think? Is this a genuine reflection of the civil service, or is it strategic spin?
Good question.
Okay, on to portrait number 4, Richard. This one's pretty inspiring. He joined the civil service through a program for people with challenging backgrounds.
Oh, interesting. What kind of challenges?
We're talking prison, homelessness, addiction. But he turned his life around.
Wow. That's incredible.
Now he works at a job center, helping ex-offenders get back on their feet.
Using his lived experience to make a difference.
Exactly. Case called it an inspiring story, highlighting how the civil service gave him a chance to help others.
So, showcasing the human side of the civil service, their work with vulnerable people.
But, there's also a PR angle here.
Of course. Is it genuine admiration, or is he trying to deflect from the negative attention he was getting?
Hard to say, for sure.
Very true.
All right, listener, keep that in mind. We've got 4 more portraits to go.
Can't wait to hear about them.
So next up is Eloise. She's leading a team overseeing a huge government investment project in Barrow-in-Furness.
That's up in Cumbria, right?
Yeah, a town in Cumbria, £200 million project. Case highlighted her connection to the area she's working in. Said they do a better job when people designing policies have roots in the places they're working on.
So local knowledge is key.
That's his argument. He contrasted it with the old model of civil servants all clustered in London, disconnected from the rest of the country. He wants a more decentralized approach, bringing the civil service closer to the people.
Interesting. A more responsive civil service. But did he actually push for that when he was cabinet secretary?
Good question. Was it just talk? Something for our listeners to ponder.
I'll be pondering that one for sure.
Okay, portrait number 6. Rory. He worked for the Department of Health and Social Care.
Healthcare, that's a big one.
Huge. He's in charge of expanding artificial intelligence, AI, across the NHS.
That's a game changer, but also a bit controversial, no. Data privacy, algorithmic bias, all that.
Definitely. Case called him an arch innovator, focused on making the NHS more efficient. AI could improve patient care, cut down those long waiting lists.
Potentially, yeah.
But Case also acknowledged those concerns about data and building public trust.
Did he actually put any policies in place to ensure that responsible use of AI, though? Or was it all just talk?
Another point for our listeners to think about.
Another one for the list.
All right, moving on to portrait number 7, Sarah. She managed a team during Operation Pitting.
Operation Pitting. Wasn't that the evacuation from Afghanistan?
Yeah, back in August 2021, they evacuated British nationals and eligible Afghans.
That must have been intense.
Incredibly demanding. Logistically, emotionally, everything. Sarah's team ran 80 quarantine hotels in the northwest of England.
Wow, a massive undertaking.
Case praised them for their ability to adapt and respond quickly under pressure. They helped thousands of people fleeing a dangerous situation.
A real testament to the work the civil service can do in a crisis.
It is. But again, is this just a well-chosen anecdote to make the civil service look good? Or is it representative of something deeper?
Good point. It's tough to tell sometimes.
Okay, last portrait. Rizwan. He manages 18 job centers in southeast London.
Job centers, so helping people find employment.
Yep. He also won a Prime Minister's Award for exceptional public service. Case praised his commitment to improving people's lives.
Connecting them with opportunities, I imagine.
Exactly. He focused on helping young people get into work, especially after the pandemic. Case highlighted his success with the Kickstart program.
That's the one that helps young people get work experience, right?
That's it. Over 5,500 young people got onto the program thanks to Rizwan's efforts.
Impressive.
So again, Case is emphasizing the impact civil servants have on people's lives.
Painting a positive picture, but we have to ask, is it an accurate picture?
Right. Is this genuine appreciation or carefully crafted narrative control? Something for our listeners to consider.
Definitely something to think about.
All right, listener, keep all that in mind. We're about to move on to the next part of our deep dive. We'll be exploring the scandals and controversies that really put Simon Case's leadership to the test.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back. We're digging into the career of Simon Case, trying to figure out, was he a grifter or was he gifted? Was he a savvy player who knew how to work the system? Or was he genuinely committed to public service, even when it meant making tough calls? We've seen hints of both sides.
Definitely. A complicated guy. And things get even more interesting when we look at what led to his resignation.
Because it wasn't exactly a quiet exit, was it?
Not at all. The whole political scene was a bit of a dumpster fire at that point. Scandals left and right, lots of pressure on the government.
And Case, having been so closely tied to the previous prime minister,
He became a bit of a target, seen as a liability.
someone who had to go to help the government distance itself from the mess.
Exactly. So, what did he say? What was the official reason for stepping down?
Health reasons. In his resignation letter, he said, and I quote, "It is a shame that I feel I have to spell this out, but my decision is solely to do with my health and nothing to do with anything else."
Health reasons. But was that the whole story?
Well, sources like The Independent suggest that several cabinet ministers had lost faith in him.
They wanted him out.
They were pushing for his removal. One even said, he has got to go now. Another insisted it should be with immediate effect.
Wow. No messing around.
Right. They wanted a clean break, a fresh start. So, listener, what do you believe? The health reasons. Or was he pushed?
Tough to say for sure. But I think his resignation, regardless of the reason, points to a bigger issue. The increasing politicization of the civil service.
That's a really important point. In theory, the civil service is supposed to be neutral. Impartial advice and support, no matter who's in charge.
Right. Serving the country, not a political party.
Exactly. That's a core principle of the Civil Service Code, their rulebook. But in practice, that neutrality has become harder and harder to maintain, especially with all the political division these days.
It's like the lines have blurred. The civil service has been dragged into the political arena.
So it's become harder to separate what's best for the country from what's best for the party in power.
Exactly. And this has led to accusations of cronyism, favoritism, lack of accountability.
People are worried that top civil service jobs are going to political allies, not the most qualified people.
And that erodes trust. People start to wonder, is the civil service working for them? Or just for the people at the top?
And this brings us back to Simon Case. Do you think he made this problem of politicization worse?
Well, That close relationship with Boris Johnson didn't help. Some saw him as more of a political operator than a neutral advisor, someone who was willing to bend the rules to protect the prime minister.
We talked about those controversies earlier. Partygate, the BBC chair loan scandal, those incidents made it look like he was more interested in protecting those in power than in upholding the integrity of the civil service.
Definitely didn't help his image.
So when he resigned, there was this feeling of, okay, maybe now we can start to fix things.
A chance for reform.
And the new prime minister, Keir Starmer, seemed to be on the same page. He talked about wanting to change how government works, emphasizing the need for a more mission-led approach.
He even used the phrase complete rewiring of the British state.
Big words.
Sounds like he wants some serious change.
So who did he pick to lead this rewiring?
Sir Chris Wormald, a longtime civil servant. He'd been running the Department of Health and Social Care.
So someone with a lot of experience in the system. Was there anything about his appointment that stood out? Any hints about how Starmer plans to approach this whole rewiring thing?
Well, Starmer's language was very deliberate. He stressed the need for strong leadership in the civil service to carry out his plan for change. He specifically mentioned Wormald's ability to deliver bold and ambitious long-term reform.
So it doesn't sound like he's just looking for someone to maintain the status quo.
No, it seems like he wants someone who can shake things up. Someone who's not afraid to challenge the way things have always been done. Someone who can balance respecting the traditions and expertise of the civil service while also pushing for real change.
That's a tough balance to strike.
It is, and it raises the question, what qualities are most important in a cabinet secretary these days, especially in such a divided and distrustful political climate?
Great question. We actually spoke to the Institute for Government, a think tank that focuses on improving government, and they had some interesting thoughts.
What did they say?
They said the new cabinet secretary has to be able to rebuild trust, both within the civil service itself and with the public.
Makes sense. After all those scandals, trust is definitely in short supply.
They said this new leader needs to be competent, experienced, but also demonstrably honest and transparent. Someone willing to push back against ministers when necessary. Someone with integrity.
Someone who puts the country first.
Exactly. But they also said it's not enough to just be a moral beacon. You also need to be politically savvy.
You need to understand how things work in Whitehall, how to manage those relationships, how to be both principled and pragmatic.
Because at the end of the day, you need to be able to get things done. You have to be able to work with people, even those you disagree with, to achieve your goals.
It's a balancing act.
So do you think Chris Wormald, the new guy, fits the bill? Does he have what it takes to lead the civil service through this period of reform? Can he restore public trust?
It's still early days. His appointment has been well received, mostly. He's seen as a safe choice, experienced, someone who can bring stability. But does he have the vision, the drive to really make those big changes Starmer's talking about? That remains to be seen. It's a big ask.
Huge. And the stakes are high. A functioning civil service is vital for any democracy. So listener, as we head into the final part of our deep dive, think about this. What do you think the future holds for the civil service? Can it adapt and evolve? And what lessons can we learn from the Simon Case era? Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been picking apart the career of Simon Case, trying to figure out, was he more grifter or gifted? His story's taken us through some of the most powerful corridors, from Brexit to Partygate, and, well, it's been quite a journey.
It really has. And as we wrap this up, I think it's worth taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, Case's story is not just about one guy's ambition. It reflects the struggles and the pressures the civil service faces, not just in the UK, but in democracies all over the world, really.
Right, because on one hand, you need that experience, that continuity, people who really understand how government works, how to keep things running smoothly.
Absolutely. Those experienced civil servants, they're the link between the politicians and the actual machinery of government. That expertise is vital for actually getting things done. But then again, there's this growing realization that the civil service needs to adapt, The world's changing faster than ever. Technology's disrupting everything. Economies are shifting. We've got global challenges like climate change. The old ways might not cut it anymore.
And Case himself kind of admitted that, right? In his farewell speech, he talked about balancing continuity with change, encouraging the civil service to evolve and modernize.
He did. But did his actions really match his words, or was he more focused on protecting the system as it is and the people at the top? Some would say his time was marked by a resistance to real change, more about maintaining the status quo than embracing new ideas.
And that's where those criticisms about cronyism and a toxic work environment come in.
Right.
If you've got a culture of favoritism and fear, how can you possibly encourage the kind of innovation and creativity needed to tackle these huge, complicated 21st century problems?
Exactly. And it begs the question, is real reform even possible within the civil service? Can an institution so rooted in tradition and hierarchy really transform itself to meet the needs of a world that's changing so rapidly? It's a question that goes way beyond just Simon Case. It's something every democracy needs to wrestle with.
Because the stakes are high.
Yeah.
The civil service, it's crucial for making sure government actually works for the people. And if it can't adapt, if it gets too stuck in its ways, it risks becoming irrelevant, out of touch, and ultimately failing the very people it's supposed to serve.
And that brings us full circle back to that question. Grifter or gifted? It's tempting to try and put someone like Simon Case in one box or the other, but it's rarely that simple, is it? There are nuances, shades of gray. And maybe the biggest takeaway from his story is this. Power is complicated. Leadership is messy. And holding those in power accountable, it's a constant battle.
Well said. So listener, as we wrap up our deep dive into Simon Case, we want to leave you with this. What do you think are the most important qualities in a leader, especially one working in the often shadowy world of government? What kind of leadership does it take to navigate all those complexities and ensure the system is actually serving the people?
Maybe it's a mix of strategic brilliance and rock-solid integrity. Maybe it's about inspiring and empowering others while also holding them to account. Or maybe it's something completely different. We don't have all the answers, but we hope this deep dive has given you something to chew on, encouraged you to keep asking those tough questions. Because ultimately, the future of our democracies depends on engaged citizens who demand better from their leaders and the systems that govern their lives.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.